Hello and welcome to another video. This is a follow-up from my last video, which was Tony Lambrianou's statement that was given by Tony to the police or to his solicitor to aid an appeal for his conviction in 1969. It is quite a revealing statement, and although Tony Lambrianou is always credited with keeping his mouth shut and not giving evidence against the twins, that was not strictly true, as we have seen. Tony did say that he was owed some kind of help for his appeal due to sticking by the twins and really not having any chance at the trial in 1969. You can see Tony's point here. It is up to the viewer here to decide if Tony was justified in giving that statement or if he broke the criminal code that he said he lived by. Today is going to be more statements. It's the turn of Chris Lambrianou, and we will also look at a statement made by Ronnie Bender. Their statements, like Tony's, were made for an appeal against their sentences in 1969. It is said that these statements could have been given as early as June 1969. We will be going over the same ground as we have done with Tony's statement, so I hope it does not get boring for you. There is also another statement that was given by one of the two men at Evering Road that night when Jack McVite was killed. The two men were Trevor and Terry, and they were friends of Ronnie Kray's. I will read some of Trevor's statement a bit later. So I hope this video does not become a bit tedious with it going over the same things with these statements, but we will start with Chris Lambrianou's statement, and it is as follows. At the material time I was living in Birmingham, I used to come down to London to see my father and brothers from time to time. On the 27th of October 1967, I went to a club called Dole's in Digbeth, and Ray Mills was there. We agreed, as we were both going to London the next day, to meet in an old pub in Lemon Street. On the 28th of October, I came down in my car, a Ford Corsair, and went round to Tony, my brother, at about 7:30 p.m. I told him I was meeting Ray Mills for a drink and asked if he fancied one. Tony knew Alan Mills, but not Ray Mills, and I knew Ray Mills, but not Alan Mills. We went to the pub in Lemon Street, and the Mills came in, and we had a few drinks. We decided to go elsewhere and went to the Carpenter's Arms, which is a pub owned by the Krays. We had a couple of drinks and I met Ronnie and Reggie Kray. I introduced them to the Mills. We were there about 30 minutes and Ronnie Hart, Connie Whitehead, Pat Connolly and Old Man Kray were also there. From there we went to the Queen's in Hackney Road. It was then decided that we would go to the Regency Club. Once the four of us were there at the Regency in the upstairs bar, we noticed Jack McVite in the corner with someone else I did not know. I had known McVite for some 3 years, and he joined us for a drink and was introduced to the Mills. McVite was dodging about the bar, and when it closed at midnight he suggested we went downstairs. We agreed, but I personally did not want to be there too long because I had to meet a gal at 3:30 a.m. at Euston. While downstairs I noticed Ronnie Hart coming into the club with Connie Whitehead, and he picked up a box with a drink in it. Tony left us for a while. When he came back he said there was a party going on and there seemed to be a general invitation all round. Ronnie Bender said the twins were having a party. I was not very keen, but as the others wanted to go, including the Mills, I went along. I was going to get my car. McVite said we could go in his car, and we all got in. McVite was driving, I was next to him. Tony and the two Mills brothers were in the back. McVite had had some drink, but he was certainly not drunk. The journey took 3 to 4 minutes, and then we parked outside an all-night bakery in a road opposite Carol Skinner's. We all got out and walked across the road. I did not know if it was alright to bring the Mills in view of their animosity towards the Krays. I don't know what that's about. So I asked them to wait. Tony and I followed McVite down the stairs, and by the time I got into the room, McVite was already there. I noticed there were only the two Krays, Ronnie Hart, and two youths dancing. The music was loud. Suddenly I saw Reggie Kray jump up on McVite from behind and put a small gun up to the back of his head. Frankly, I thought it was a toy pistol. I heard him pull the trigger a number of times without success. Reggie turned round to Hart and said, "It doesn't effing well work. You gave me a duddin." The Mills were in the room by this time, having been brought down by Connie Whitehead, and I realised then that the importance of what was happening, and I was right choked and upset. I left the room and had a terrible argument with Tony on the stairs outside, accusing him of setting McVite up. Great confusion followed, with comings and goings, and I sat down on the stairs and wept. I told Tony to the words of the effect that if I had known about this, I would not have come. Reggie Kray came out of the room and asked what the trouble was, and I told him I thought it was an effing liberty bringing me over like this, and he said, "Don't be stupid," and went back into the room. I saw McVite in a chair talking to Ronnie. I said to Tony, "Who do they effing well think they are? God, I'm going to get a shooter." We went upstairs and got just outside the front door when we met Ronnie Bender. He said, "Is the party still on?" And I told him what was going on, and he said, "Don't be silly, go and have a drink, this is all a joke." So we went downstairs again, and I saw the Krays and McVite still shouting. Again I tried to leave, and then I heard one of the Krays say, "Don't let anyone leave the house." There was a general argument, and Ronnie Hart and Connie Whitehead stopped me going, and then Reggie Kray came out of the room and said, "What's the matter with you?" And I said I wanted to leave, and then I said I'd go and get another shooter. This was a ruse by this time. I was terrified. Reggie told Connie Whitehead to drive me round to my house and pick up a shooter. I thought the Krays had gone mad. I went in Connie Whitehead's white Jaguar, and he dropped me off at my house, and I got a 38. I was in a hurry to get back because my brother Tony was there together with the Mills brothers, and I thought anything could happen to them. Connie Whitehead was not anxious to go back, and we had an argument lasting about 10 minutes. Eventually he took me back, and I rang the doorbell of the house, and Ronnie Bender opened the door. He said, "It's all over." I said, "Effing now, what's happened?" I went into the room and saw McVite lying on the floor under the window dead. I couldn't believe he was dead. I thought at first he was just badly injured. The Krays had gone, and Tony and Ronnie Bender were in a terrible state, and I was terrified. Bender said, "We've been told to sling him over the railway at Casanov Road." And I said, "You can't, it's stupid." And then I thought, and I said, "We will put it in the motor and put it at the other side of the water." We rolled the carpet up, and I got a candlewick bedspread from upstairs and rolled McVite up, and we put him in the passage. There was thick liver on the floor. I cleared it up and emptied it down the toilet. McVite had been lying under the window on his back with his legs doubled up underneath him. His eyes were open and his head was nearly severed. From his stomach there was pieces of dark brown liquid oozing. Carol Skinner was standing at the top of the stairs. Bender told them that there had been a bit of trouble downstairs and she was to go into the bedroom and stay there. We cleaned up as much as possible. I put my gun in a pram in the spare room. Tony went out and got McVitie's car, and I walked round and got my car from the Regency. McVitie's body was put into his own car. Tony drove it with a pair of socks on his hands, while Bender and the body were in the back. I followed in my car. We went through the Rotherhithe tunnel and then round the one-way system, and eventually we stopped outside a church where there was a lot of confetti opposite a new block of flats. We left the car and the body there. Bender and Tony got into my car and we returned north of the river and then dropped Bender off at the other end of the tunnel. We went to Tony's house and had a cup of tea, and then I remembered I had left the gun in the pram in Carol Skinner's flat. We went to Euston and picked up the girl that I had to meet, and then on to Carol Skinner's flat. The girl stayed outside. It was around 4 AM and Tony had not wanted to come. Carol Skinner opened the door. Vicky, Connie Whitehead and George Plummer were there. They were washing everything in sight, the floor, the walls, but there was thick blood under the lino, and I cleaned this up. I then asked Carol Skinner to make some tea, and while she did, I slipped out and got the gun, and then we left. The following Monday week, I went down to London again from Birmingham, and Tony gave me a message that the Krays wanted to see me. Needless to say, I was scared stiff because I felt that if they had done this to McVite, they could equally do this to us. Tony did not want to go, but I felt that if we didn't, the Krays would suspect us. We went to the Carpenter's Arms, and Ronnie and Reggie were there with John Dixon, Albert Donahue and Ronnie Hart. Reggie Kray, I remember, asked if I wanted a drink, and although I was scared, I said to him it was an effing liberty what had happened. I asked him what was wrong with McVite, was he a grass or a bad man, and Reggie just said no, he was none of those things, he was just an effing nuisance, and said that it was just unfortunate that it had happened and that I was to forget about it. Then he said, don't worry, we had to get rid of your car because your prints were all over it, and Tony's and the Mills brothers. Then Chris Lambrianou talked about his relationship with the Krays. He said, I first met the Krays casually in 1963, but not until August 1967 did I drink with them. This arose when Ronnie Hart told me the twins wanted to see me, and I went to the Carpenter's Arms with Tony as a result. They told me that if I should take gambling parties to their gaming club in the Grand Hotel in Leicester, I would be paid a commission. They invited me to drink at the Carpenter's Arms when I was in London. I was aware of who they were and the power they held. I was at no time a member of their firm. After I had been questioned by the police about the McVite affair, I was very upset, and the Kray twins knew this and told me not to worry, and got Carol Skinner to take me to Sampson's solicitors. I saw Manny Freedy and he wanted to refer me to Ralph Hyams. Since he was not there, I was asked to return at 5 PM, which I did. I made a statement to him at his request, and I was asked what the police had said and how they had treated me. I was asked to come back the next day and swear it before a commissioner for oath. Hyams said, you will never be charged, the twins have it all, okay? After my arrest, I asked to see a solicitor, and the police were told it was Sampson's because I had already been to see them. Eventually I saw Ralph Hyams at West End Central police station, and he told me to tell the police nothing. The next day at Bow Street Magistrates Court, Manny Freedy came into the cell and said it will never get past the magistrates, and warned me to say nothing. I was sent with Ronnie Bender to Wandsworth Prison, and my brother Tony was sent to Brixton Prison with the Krays. On the following Wednesday, I made a statement in my own handwriting on 3 foolscap lined pages. This did not set out the account as I have put it down truthfully above, but involved the Krays and told the essence of what happened. I gave it to Ralph Hyams, and he read it and said that he would have to show it to the Krays. I told Hyams not to show it to the Krays, but he said he would have to. 2 days later, Hyams came back and said that the twins had said that it was not to be used. I went on about it to Hyams, and he kept on reminding me that Tony was in Brixton with the Krays. He said, you have got to do it their way. The twins say they weren't there and you have to help. He told me that I had nothing to worry about because the twins had a lot of power. He altered the statement and I was told what to say. Just before the trial, we all went to Brixton for a joint meeting with Hyams, the Krays, Ronnie Bender and my brother Tony. Hyams told me again that the twins were very upset about my statement and inferred that this meant angry with me. When I saw Ronnie, he was livid with me and he said, "Are you effing well trying to put us in it?" He was swearing and shouting, and quite honestly I thought I was going to get done. Hyams was present during the whole outburst. Whatever I said always went back to the Krays, and whenever I saw counsel, someone from Sampson's was always there. I knew I could not change solicitors because the Krays had told me that I had got to think about my family. I knew that their power extended well beyond the prison walls, and I thought it was more than my life was worth to go against them. I asked Hyams to call witnesses, Vicky, Ronnie Hart, George Plummer, and the two youths, Trevor and Terry, whose names we gave them and whose addresses they already knew, but he refused and said he could not do nothing that would affect the twins. It is only now that I realise something had to be done. So Chris Lambrianou there saying something had to be done, as in he needs to give a statement now to aid his appeal. So that was Chris's statement there. We come to a part of Ronnie Bender's statement now. We pick up his statement as he's returning to 97 Everingham Road after having been there earlier. He slipped out to see his girlfriend, who was at the Regency Club just around the corner. He arrives at 97 Everingham Road with Connie Whitehead in Connie's car. We were walking up the pathway to the front door of the house. Christopher Lambrianou was coming out of the house and the front door was open. I said, "Alright Chris," and he replied, "There's been a bit of trouble downstairs," or words to that effect. He also said Reggie Kray and McVite had been fighting. He said Reggie Kray had been threatening McVite. McVite had said something to the effect of, "Who do they think they are? Gods?" referring to the Kray twins. I thought to myself that I did not want to go downstairs on my own with Connie Whitehead, and I said, "They want to see me, Chris. Come down and have a drink with me. I didn't have a chance to have a drink with you at the Regency." And I said, "Don't take any notice of them fighting. They're always hitting someone on the chin." I said, "Come on down with me." I should say here that Christopher Lambrianou was the first person I saw coming out of the front door and down the path as I and Connie Whitehead were going to the door. But as we reached the door, we were joined by Tony Lambrianou and the two Mills brothers. These men were congregating in the passage of the house. We all of us then went downstairs towards the basement. Behind me were Christopher Lambrianou and Connie Whitehead. The others were in front of me as we reached the basement. I remember the two Mills brothers went into the basement room with Tony Lambrianou. The door of the room was open and I could hear what seemed to be a scuffle going on in the room. I was standing just outside the door and Ronald Kray and Ronnie Hart came over to me, and I said to Ronnie Kray, "What's going on, Ron? What's happening?" He replied, "I will give him challenging me." He then walked across the room and struck McVite in the face. I remember saying, "Don't Ron, don't Ron." As the fight was going on, McVite had his back to the window and I heard the sound of breaking glass. I was watching, and I am quite sure that when the window was broken as it was not through McVite trying to escape through the window, but because he was forced back into the window by the blows being struck by the three men, Ronnie Hart and the Kray twins. I assumed when I heard the glass break that McVitie's elbow had gone through the window. I would add at this stage that McVite was still fighting back. All the time this was going on, I was still standing in the doorway of the room. As McVite was moving forward, punching away from the window, I saw Ronnie Hart produce a knife and hand it to Reggie Kray. So far as I could see, the knife was under his coat. Reggie Kray immediately stabbed McVite violently, twice in the stomach, and then once in the left side of the face and once in the neck. As this took place, McVite keeled over and fell across towards Ronnie Hart's legs over by the window. Hart had been holding McVite with one hand at the time, and he produced the knife and handed it to Reggie Kray. As this incident took place, the people in the room rushed to the door, and I can remember that I was nearly knocked over by Tony Lambrianou as he ran to the door and towards the stairs. The two youths also ran towards the door, and as they did so, I can remember saying to them, "Don't run, walk, for your own sake." I was petrified at what had happened at this stage, and when I said this to the youths, I was frightened that Reggie Kray might stab them. I did not know where he would stop because he seemed completely berserk. As I said this to the youths, I ran forward to where Reggie Kray was standing, about 6 feet from me. I struggled with him for about 10 seconds and got hold of him by the wrist of the hand in which he was holding the knife. I remember him struggling with me and succeeding in transferring the knife to his other hand. I managed to get the knife out of his other hand and I jumped backwards. I can remember Ronald Kray saying to me, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" I then realised that in taking the knife from Reggie Kray, I had put myself in danger. Reggie Kray said, "Look what you have done." The palm of his hand was bleeding where the knife had cut it as I took it from him. I can remember saying, "I never done it." Ronnie Kray said, "He never done it, he never done it," meaning that I had not been responsible for the cut on Reggie Kray's hand. Reggie Kray then started an argument with Ronnie Hart. I heard the knife being mentioned, but I left the room immediately and got hold of a towel and handed it to Reggie Kray to stop the bleeding on his hand. He wrapped it round his cut hand. I remember at this time that Ronnie Hart re-entered the room carrying a gun, and Ronald Kray said to his brother, "Show him your hand." He took the towel off and handed it to Ronnie Hart and said, "Wrap the things up in that, we're taking them with us." I know that when I left the room to get the towel, I had not got the knife with me, and so far as I can remember, I gave it either to Ronnie Hart or Ronnie Kray. I can remember the knife and the gun being wrapped in the towel that had been put around Reggie Kray's hand. I would emphasise here that when Ronnie Hart came back into the room with the gun, it was the first time I'd ever seen it. I'm quite emphatic that no stage whatsoever during the fight with McVite did I ever see a gun or ever see anyone attempt to shoot McVite. I got the towel from the kitchen. When I went back into the room, Reggie Kray said, "What did you take the knife out of my hand for?" I said, "I didn't want you to hurt yourself." I said, "I never done that to your hand, Reg, you done that when you were killing him." I said all this because I was petrified of the way he was looking at me, and I realised the position I had put myself in. Ronnie Kray said to Reggie, "It's not him you want to have a go at," meaning me, "it's him," pointing to Ronnie Hart. Ronald Kray said, "We have got to get the body out of the house." He said to Ronnie Hart, "You come with us," meaning himself and his brother. I said, "What can I do with it, Ron?" He said, "Chuck it somewhere. Chuck it over the railway somewhere." I said, "Where?" He said, "Put it over the railway at Casanov Road, opposite Corals." I said, yes, I will do it, I will do it." I wanted to get them out of the house, and the Kray twins and Ronnie Hart went up the stairs and presumably they left the house. I then went into the kitchen, got myself a drink, and so far as I know, I was the only one left in the basement of the house. Ronnie Bender's 10-page statement concludes with him turning up at Charlie Kray's house after the murder, which is a bit confusing as it is said that he went on to where the twins were hiding out at their friend's Harry Hopwood's flat. It is said Bender went there after helping Tony Lambrianou dump the body of McVite over in South London, and then when turning up at Harry Hopwood's flat and telling the twins where they had left the body, it drew a bollocking from Ronnie. But Bender's statement as him turning up at Charlie Kray's house and having a conversation with Charlie's wife Dolly Kray, and it is as follows. I went to Charlie Kray's house. His wife Dolly Kray opened the door. She said, "Who is it?" I said, "Ronnie Bender. I want to see Charlie. It's important." I remember she took the chain off the door and let me in. She told me, "Charlie's out." "What's he had to go out for?" I replied. "I don't know," she said. "What's happened?" I said, "They have killed Jack McVite." She said, "Oh, no, no." She seemed to be about to faint. She seemed concerned about Charlie and picked up the telephone and made a call. I heard her say, "Is that you, Tom? You had better come over. They've just done McVite," she said. Obviously in response to a question from the other end, she said, "He's out," and then a little later she said, "All right." She gave me a cup of tea, asked me about what had happened, and I told her I didn't want to talk about it. About 20 minutes after I arrived, Tommy Cowley came and I told him what had happened and explained to him where the body was. I didn't mention the Lambrianous to him, and then Charlie Kray came in. He told me to go home. I asked him for a lift, but he said he couldn't give me one, and Tommy Cowley also refused. So that's Ronnie Bender's statement. Finally, we come to Trevor's statement of what happened that night. Trevor was one of the two men that were friends of Ronnie Kray's. They are often referred to as the two men that were dancing in the flat when McVite and the others entered. His short statement is as follows. I remember the party you are talking about. That night me and Terry was asked to go over to the Carpenter's Arms for a drink, and we went there. There was a crowd there. I remember Ronnie Bender and Ronnie Hart were there, and Ronnie and Reggie Kray. Somebody said, "Did we fancy coming to a party?" and we said yes. We went to the party in a motor. I don't know the people who were in the motor, but we went round to a house on a corner and we had to walk up a path to the front door with a garden to the right of the path. I don't know the name of the road it was in. We went in the front door, along the passage and down some stairs into a basement. We had to turn to the left on the stairs to get down to the basement. At the bottom of the stairs to the left there was a room with a party going on in it. Next to this room, but further away from the stairs, was a kitchen. There were quite a few people, as I remember, at the party when we first arrived, including women. I think about 4 women. They were dancing to music from the radiogram in the far corner of the room. I put some records on it and played them. It wasn't the sort of party I enjoy, so I had a few drinks, and after about 3/4 of an hour after we got there, everybody seemed to leave. All the women left and there was just a few fellows there. There was me and Terry, Ronnie Hart and Ronnie Bender, and about 5 or 6 others whose names I don't know. I think Tony Lambrianou was there. Ronnie Kray then asked me and Terry to make some more noise. He didn't say why, but I thought he wanted us to do this because he was going to hit somebody. So we turned up the radiogram loud and danced about singing loudly and all that to make it sound like there was a party going on. Ronnie Kray and Reggie Kray, Ronnie Hart and Ronnie Bender were standing by the door while we did this. The next thing was a fellow came into the door of the room. I don't know why, but I had a feeling he might have been pushed into the room. I looked at his face at the time and I think I would recognise him. I had never seen him before. As we came into the room, Ronnie and Reggie Kray grabbed hold of him. I guess this was the fella we had to turn the music up for, and they were all going to set about him. I ran from the middle of the room to the wall. You have shown me a photograph, and I have no doubt at all that this is the man who I saw coming into the room that night, who the Kray brothers grabbed hold of. Anyway, after running to the wall of the room, I ran round the back of them and out of the room into the passage outside at the bottom of the stairs. As I did this, everything seemed to happen at once. Someone came downstairs, I think 2 fellows together at the same time. Somebody came out of the room. I had come out just beforehand. I was afraid to look at who was there. I was scared and I looked at the floor. I heard voices from the living room where I had been previously, and they were saying, "Who are they?" or "Where are they?" or something like that. I can't remember the words. I can't remember what the words were really, but it sounded like they were trying to get something out of the fellow and he wouldn't say. It was the voices of the 2 Krays that I heard, because I recognised the voices. By this time, several men were standing outside of the room, but I can't tell you who they were. There was people going in and coming out of the living room, so I'm not sure who was where at any one time. I know the Krays never came out of the living room because I could hear their voices in there all the time. I don't know who it was because I don't think I even looked at the face of who it was, but I saw someone take a knife into the living room. I saw the knife. It was a long knife. It had a long blade about 8 or 9 inches long, like a carving knife. I think whoever it was must have got it from the kitchen, but I'm not sure of this. I seem to think somebody ran up the stairs after I saw the knife taken into that room, because I heard the noise on the stairs as if this was happening. I didn't see who it was because, like I said, I kept looking down at the floor all the time. I forgot to mention it before, but a little while before this, after the men in the photo that you showed me arrived, I think before the knife was taken into the room, I heard the breaking of glass as though a window had been broken. Another thing I should have mentioned was that just before the glass was broken, I looked into the room and the man in the photograph was standing over the other side of the room to the left of the window as I looked at it, and Ronnie and Reggie Kray had a hold of him. I think one on each side of him. They were holding him by his arms and the front of his shirt by the chest. When I first saw them, the man in the photo was standing side onto me, his left side towards me, but as I watched, he jerked suddenly as if struggling to get free, and he turned to face me as he did so. The next thing was that the door of the room was slammed shut from the inside, so I couldn't see anymore. Within seconds of this, I heard what sounded like a window breaking. Very shortly after this, I heard voices from the room, like loud moans, and although I couldn't see what was happening, I knew from the noises I heard they were stabbing him with a knife. Then it all went quiet. One of the Krays came out of the room after a short while. I can't remember which one, and they said, "Get the boys away." As soon as he said this, me and Terry got out of the house together as quick as we could without running, but as soon as we got outside onto the pavement, we walked as fast as we could to the main road at the top of the turning the house was in. We saw a cab and we took it. It dropped us at Bethnal Green Station. I don't know what time it was by then, but I suppose it must have been 2 AM or something like that. I don't really know. About 3 days later, I was with Terry in Pillen's betting shop, now called City Tote, in Bethnal Green Road. Somebody I can't remember who, told me and Terry that Ronnie Kray wanted to see us. We were told to be at Bethnal Green Station at a certain time that evening. I think it was 8 o'clock. We went there, and I think Ronnie Hart picked us up in a motor and took us to a flat somewhere where we saw Ronnie Kray. He said, "The fellow's alright now, he's in hospital, but he's alright, there's nothing to worry about, don't worry." I said, "Alright," but I didn't really believe him. I thought the man must be dead from what I heard that night. After you saw me, when I made the statement to you that I knew nothing at all, Tony Lambrianou and Chrissy Lambrianou came into Tony's cafe in Bethnal Green Road, or it may have been Peter's cafe, I'm not sure what it's called. I was in there with a friend of mine. I think this was the day after you had seen me. They knew I had been seen by the police, and they asked me what I had told the police, and I said I had made a statement to the police denying that I knew anything about it. Tony Lambrianou told me to keep it that way. The next time you saw me, Tony Lambrianou came to see me again. I think on the next day. He asked me what had happened, and I told him I had said the same as before. After I saw you the first time, Terry said we should go up and see Sampson's, the solicitors. We went up there together. We didn't have an appointment, we just went up there and said it was about the Kray case, and we were seen by a man who looks like a Greek or an Indian, who talks with a stutter. That would be Ralph Hyams. We told him we had been seen by the police, and he took a written statement from us, which we signed. This was to say we knew nothing about what had happened or any part of it. The man at Sampson's told us if we were seen by the police again, we should say we wished to say nothing and to ask for him. He gave me a card with his telephone number on it so that I could ring him. I am sorry I had not told you the truth about all this before, but I am terrified for myself and my mother if it ever came out that I had told you this. I have no father, and we live in Bethnal Green, and we can get got by anyone at any time. I told you when I first saw you today, I will never go into court and give this story as a witness. I'm afraid to, and I would die if necessary to avoid doing so. I don't want anybody except you and Mr. Hemingway, that's Detective Sergeant Hemingway, he was there taking notes, to know that I have told you all this. I don't want to sign this, but it is the absolute truth. So that concludes the statements given about the night that Jack McVite was murdered by Reggie Kray in October 1967. Trevor and Terry were not really members of the firm. Their association to the firm came through Ronnie Kray. You could say they were Ronnie's boys, which is a term bandied about quite a bit, or Ronnie's young men. We can't talk too much about them giving statements, as like I said, they were not really part of it all. They just happened to be there the night the twins decided that Jack McVite had to go. As far as Tony and Chris Lambrianou and Ronnie Bender goes, we have to remember that they lived by the so-called criminal code. We have to apply that term loosely though. Although there was a sort of a criminal code, it was open to a bit of rule bending. Even the twins would have had some cooperation with the police at some times, and maybe turned a few people in to help themselves out. The Richardsons, and especially Charlie Richardson, it's well documented that he had the police in his pocket, so he would have also bent the rules on this criminal code. Even Freddie Foreman, we know, had a close relationship with the deputy head of the flying squad, Frank Williams. This type of thing had to be done in them days, probably before and ever since. If you want to get ahead and stay ahead in the criminal world, you do need to have a close relationship with the police. But despite me saying this, there was a criminal code that most would stick to if it involved their close inner circle, their firm, whether it be the Kray firm or the Richardson firm. In my opinion, I think it would be quite harsh to label the Lambrianous and Ronnie Bender as grasses, but that does not mean the term could not be applied. As far as we know, they did keep quiet on their arrest with the firm, and as far as we know, at the Kray trial in 1969, as we have to go that their statements were made for their appeal against their sentence after the trial in 1969. Nevertheless, they did give statements to the police or their solicitors against the twins. If we take the criminal code as being more strict, then yes, they broke that code that they live by. If we take it on the criminal code with a bit of rule bending, then it's hard to point the finger at them for being grasses. All three men were hung out to dry at the Kray trial. There's no doubt about that. What the twins said went, and that had to be abided to by all three men. It was more than their life was worth to go against the twins. There was threats to their families made by the twins, as we heard in Chris Lambrianou's statement. So the Lambrianous and Bender were stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's all this that led to their official statements. They felt they needed a lifeline, and this was the only way. As Tony Lambrianou puts it in the book Getting It Straight, Villains Talking with Freddie Foreman, he felt he deserved a crumb off the table by making that statement and giving himself the best chance of winning an appeal against his sentence after the twins got lifed off for 30 years recommended. I suppose you do have to look at the whole picture rather than just pointing the finger at these three men and calling them grasses. The statements didn't do Ronnie Bender or the Lambrianous any good, as they all served a long time in prison. Maybe give me your thoughts on this in the comments if you wish. Do you feel that Bender and the Lambrianous were justified in giving these statements in what could be seen as grassing? Bearing in mind that all three men lived by this criminal code that they supposedly upheld. Or do you see it as grassing, plain and simple, to try and save their own skins with no thought to any appeals the twins might have wanted to do in the future? It is a tough one, but anyway, this is the last video of the year from me. I would like to thank you all for watching my videos over the last year, all your comments and likes, even your dislikes. I have enjoyed making these videos. It was a bit daunting going from just music and pictures to actually making proper videos. It's been a bit of a learning process for me, which has put me right out of my comfort zone. I think videos like these were needed to be done, though, as there is so much to the story of the Krays that goes beyond pictures and music. So I thank you all for accepting the change in the direction of the channel. So that's about it for this video. I do hope you have enjoyed it. I hope you all have a good Christmas and a good New Year. I hope you and your families all stay safe in these trying times, and I will see you all again next year. Thank you.